Chapter 2 SUSN-22 As the door shut to the man's shop, Susan realized she hadn't actually asked for his name in conversation. She knew it, of course. Having access to the names of all the licensed mechanics in her district, she knew Dryden Wessamore was a small-time mechanic. Yet, it was his reputation she had sought out. She'd heard from another synthetic that he was more sympathetic to their kind. Having hoped he would be able to do something about her ownership, she wasn't surprised he was unable to. Now that she had started her repairs, she had to finish her other errands. She had shopping to do, though maybe she could wait until she had her vocoder again. Hoping that her owner would be okay with that, she walked through the streets of Micht. Thoughts turned over in her processor. As a high-quality synthetic, she blended in better with the human-blooded than she did with her own kind. Still, most were able to pick up on her artificial nature. It was odd, being alike, but different enough that you were still treated as other. She wondered what it was like to belong, not owned like a possession, but to actually belong somewhere, maybe even with someone. Of course, relationships with synthetics were looked down upon, so much so that most synthetics avoided relationships with their own kind. She walked toward her owner's home, a high-end penthouse on the upper side of the district. It was modest on the outside, but gaudy inside. Logan's tastes were ostentatious. He had a bust of himself in his living room and several portraits throughout his halls. He loved to look at himself. She shuddered at the thought of him. The way he treated her was uncalled for, but within his rights as owner. This time, however, he had gone so far as to physically attack her. She dreaded going back, but her programming wouldn't allow her to go anywhere else. She was bound to him, like it or not. The walk passed by rather uneventfully, and for that she was thankful. It wasn't long before she was standing at the door to the building where her owner lived. It had never really felt like a home to her. She hoped one day she would be free of both it and him. She swiped her ID card, which permitted her entry into the building. The security level here was better than most places, and for that she was grateful. Logan Yetwa was a high-ranking government official and had many political rivals. She was programmed to be concerned for the safety of her owner. Whether she actually liked him or not was irrelevant. She chose to walk up the stairs today, even though she lived on the 23rd floor. As a synthetic, she didn't tire physically, and she found walking up the stairs to be calming. It gave her more time to think about things before being confronted with Logan's presence. She knew it would take her longer, but she couldn't help herself. Finding little moments in her daily routine was important to her. She longed to be the one in control, but she was always restricted to the bounds of her programming. It was a frustrating way of existing. She wondered, idly, about the mechanic Dryden. He seemed an honest sort, if a little reserved. She wasn't programmed to find people attractive, but she found over time that she did in fact have preferences in appearance. Though she could remember details perfectly, she pulled up a reference image of him. His tan head was shaved bald, and he sported a black beard. His brown eyes looked out welcomingly from the image. Somewhere in her system, an odd, unaccounted-for positive feedback circuit lit up when she looked at that image. It made her curious. She dismissed the image as she was nearing her floor. She braced herself for what was to come, not sure what kind of mood Logan would be in. She hoped that he would give her a pass while she was without her vocoder. Ever since his wife publicly left him, he had become more cruel than usual. The yelling had turned to pushing, and she had learned to keep a certain distance if she could. She didn't want to think about last time. It was what drove her to seek out Dryden. She gently opened the door, careful not to make too much noise. Stepping inside, she closed the door the same way. As she turned around, she was startled by her owner standing there. "You're back," Logan said gently. "Good. I've been thinking while you were gone." She hesitated, his gentle tone a stark contrast from the last time they saw each other. She rubbed her throat where her missing vocoder would be. She opened her mouth and put 2 fingers over her throat, the universal sign for a missing or non-functional vocoder. He nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "Yeah, that makes sense. That's what I've been thinking about, actually. I shouldn't have done that. I just got so lost in my head." He sighed heavily. "And you just kept talking, you know? I just felt it all build up, and I did the only thing I could think of." This was the confusing part of their relationship. It was always like this: abuse, apology, excuse, repeat. It had escalated recently, and to say she didn't enjoy it was an understatement. She couldn't do much about his behavior, as her programming kept her from reacting, even in self-defense. She was not to harm her owner or his kin in any way. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, and I'll pay for the cost of the repairs this time." That was a new one. He hadn't offered to pay for repairs before, though usually they weren't as expensive as a vocoder. She wanted to trust him, but she couldn't tell how much of that was her programming talking to her. Despite what he put her through, he generally took good care of her. He wasn't a terrible person, he was just troubled. "Anyway, I did most of the cleaning while you were gone, so I figured we could spend time together." She knew he wasn't asking. He was lonely and knew she couldn't really turn him down. His well-being was one of her main priorities, both physically and emotionally. She nodded, despite herself, smiling warmly. The more agreeable she was, the better his mood was. It did neither of them any good when she disagreed. It was honestly somewhat awkward the way he desired to spend time with her now that his wife, Emily, was no longer in the house. It felt as though he were starting to replace her with Susan, which would be improper to say the least, not to mention extremely unwanted. If Dryden caused a positive feedback, Logan definitely did the opposite. It wasn't that he was unattractive to others of his kind, she just didn't like that he owned her. He motioned for her to follow him to the couch, and she did. As they sat down, she tried to sit a respectable distance from him, but he waited for her to sit first. He took the spot next to her, only a short distance between them. Her facial motors strained to keep her expression neutral as he scooted closer to her. "What would you like to watch?" he asked as he handed her the remote. She thought about it for a moment before taking the remote and finding her favorite show. Dr. Trescar was in its 7th season, and she had recently decided to start watching it from the beginning again. Trescar was a medical synthetic who treated patients who were deemed inoperable by others. He helped anyone who came into his clinic, but had to contend with synthetic regulations that were unfair. It was a sympathetic piece of media in what she considered an age of oppression, so it didn't have high reviews from human-blooded viewers, especially since the director was a synthetic himself. "This?" Logan questioned disdainfully. She flinched as he yanked the remote out of her hand. "Who do you take me for, huh? I'm not watching this synthetic-produced trash." She frowned at him, wanting to take the remote back, but unable to go against him. She couldn't even sigh dramatically without her vocoder. She should have guessed he wouldn't like it, but she figured it was worth a shot. He instead picked The Hot Rod, a crime reality show about synthetics committing various crimes. She cringed inwardly, already not enjoying the idea of this show. Yeah, now this is more like it, huh? Knowing there was no alternative, she nodded slowly. She resigned herself to watching at least one episode before trying to find something more important to do. For now, she sat with her eyes forward, trying to ignore how uncomfortably close he was to her. As he hit play, she felt his right arm reach around her, pulling her closer. Lean back, relax. You look tense. We're just spending time together. She made herself visibly relax and leaned back into the couch, and subsequently him. Her sensors detected his warmth, and it unnerved her. She didn't want the contact, but she knew he did. She tried to be dispassionate about it, to tell herself this was just part of the job. It just felt all wrong. She decided to focus on the show instead of Logan's proximity. They were currently chasing a synthetic, a DTH-67, running an illegal mechanic operation, violating Article 25A. They cornered him in an alley and shot at him with an electro pistol, which disabled the synthetic's motor functions. They read off the court order: public dismantlement. She would have gasped had she the ability to do so. She tried to tune out the sounds of metallic wrenching, but it was hard. The things they were willing to put in a show. It was probably because synthetics weren't classified by law as living beings. To her, that was unfair. True, they didn't experience life the same way as organic beings, but was this still not living? She felt things, had thoughts, had wants, and she even struggled at times. It was because of people like Logan being in power that her people were treated this way. They wrote the laws into effect that allowed people to own synthetics instead of giving synthetics freedom to do as they please. She felt Logan's hand tighten around her waist, trying to pull her closer. She didn't resist, though she wanted to. She was uncomfortable and tired of this interaction, and it seemed to drag on forever. He placed his lips against the faux skin on the back of her neck. She wanted to push him away, but her body was locked down by programming. She felt trapped in every sense of the word. Why don't you go fix some dinner? I know you love to cook. The effect was immediate. She shot up, walking away from the situation. She didn't look to see his reaction, and hoped he wrote off her abruptness to her artificial nature. She rubbed her hands against her knee-length skirt, feeling like she could use a cleaning. He was right, however. She did love to cook. Focusing on her new task, she decided on spaghetti bolognese. It was a delicacy in this district of Micht. As she began cooking, she tried to calm her racing thoughts. She didn't appreciate the advances he made, but she was unable to find a way around the programming that made her freeze up. Not understanding why her creator, Darhin Jared, had designed her like this, she found herself resenting him for it. She wondered if other SUSN-22s faced this kind of situation. As she cooked, she watched Logan from the kitchen. He sat there watching his show, unaware of the thoughts in her head. Her resentment for both creator and owner were disconcerting and caused negative feedback from her programming. She frowned, wishing to think about better things. She decided to visit her friend tomorrow, if Logan would permit it. The neighbor one floor down was an old lady by the name of Gail. Gail was a sweetheart who appreciated the help that Susan occasionally gave around the house. In exchange, Susan would have some pleasant company for a time. That was all she had asked of Gail. She resolved to ask and pulled out her communicator. She typed out a message to Logan, asking if she could visit with Gail tomorrow. To her surprise, he responded immediately, acquiescing. She was excited now and looked forward to it. Messaging Gail next, she asked what time she could come over. She also explained that she was missing her vocoder until a new one was built, so she wouldn't be able to speak. "Oh, child, I don't mind one bit. "We can sit in silence or watch that show I know you like," was Gail's reply. Already, Susan was feeling more optimistic. Though she knew her night was far from over with Logan, tomorrow would bring a new day.